Hi, Gryoger again, here for another Let's Play side quest, and where we're going to be talking about how to build monster encounters, specifically monster encounters for 5e and the at second level. So basically, we're moving up in the world. My Let's Play solo guys are just about to be second level, so I thought it'd be a good time to talk about second level encounters. Um, I'm playtesting with the 2014 rules, but obviously you can build your tables using the 2024 monsters as well. So basically, uh, going back to basics, the historically a challenge rating X monster was a good challenge versus a party of level X. In other words, a CR1 monster would be a good challenge, supposedly, against a level 1 party. The sweet spot of encounters is usually when you have one NPC or monster for each PC. And because the 5e rules assume that the party size is 4, if you divide the party level by 4, that will give you that sweet spot on what the CR should be for that one NPC monster versus each PC. So with that, and the fact that the best encounter sizes are generally the party size plus or minus 1, that gives you the basics for most encounters. Now, as we talked about when we covered the first level stuff, action economy is far more important than anything else. So capping the monsters appearing is far more important than worrying about anything else. But when we get up to second level, our guys are a little bit tougher. So one of the things we can start doing is thinking about easy, standard, and hard encounters. The way this is supposed to work is you first decide, if we were building an adventure, you first decide, do I want an easy encounter, a standard encounter, or a hard encounter? And if you decided to do an easy encounter, you would, this is the sweet spot right here, you would multiply CR18 times the number of people in your party. Okay, so instead of calculating it by dividing, I'm telling you this is where things went wrong for all that complicated math they're trying to do in the monster manual. I'm sorry, in the DM's guide. Instead, just use 1/8, 1/4, or 1/2. Okay. So if I want a standard encounter and I have 4 people, then I would use 4 1/4 monsters. Or I could use, this is our budget, right? 4 times 1/4 is equal to 4/4, right? 1. I could use 8 of these CR18s, or I could use 2 of these CR1/2s. Now, you should be leery about this 8 of these monsters, because we know, now that we know about action economy. And in fact, if you, I'll skip to the thing down here, your level caps moved up for second level guys. You don't want to exceed monsters coming in more than twice the party size. So 4 PC party, you don't want more than 8. And for a 5 PC party, you do not want more than 10. Okay, which means actually we could use 8 of these CR18s. So let's see. And once again, that said, the best encounter size still remains that plus or minus 1 off the party size. All right. One of the things that you should notice as you're reading through all these numbers, and if your eyes aren't glazed over, is that pretty much if we use these old style calculations, the sweet spot CRs are exactly 1/2 of what you would calculate. All right. And this is because when they were doing the 5e playtest, they got feedback that people wanted the first level party to be weak, and so they did it. Uh, it also turns out that the second level party is still weak, though quite a bit stronger than the first level party. And I'll spoil you and say that when we finally get to third level, things are about where you expect them to be. All right, so now that we've gone through the basics, let's actually make some encounter tables. So I have created a couple of encounters. Let me just bring this over. So these are my encounter tables that I made for second level for 4PC and 5PC parties. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And then I'm going to go ahead and import this. Remember, we go to tables, and then down at the bottom of the table, there's an import, right? Import text. And then we can paste in this, and we're going to call this 4 PCs level 02 mm. All right. Now, because I've imported it before, I'm saying it's delimited. I am using semicolons, and I do have column headers. So I'm just going to do it and make sure it comes in. All right. So it does look like it all came in. Now, one of the things I did do is we have enough monsters in the monster manual. I've expanded the table to have 19 instead of 16. Now notice that it also imported this as a D19 plus 1 when in fact it's supposed to be a 1D8 plus 12. So I'm going to go ahead and drag the 12 and the D8 up there to get it to roll right. That gives me the nice bell curve that I want. All right, let's do the same thing for the 5PC version. So once again, we'll go back to our Excel sheet and grab these. Copy, Control C. And then I'll import them one more time. And I'll paste it here, Control V. And make sure everything didn't change. So it looks good. Bring it in. I'm looking for down to, there they are. Let's go ahead and call this 5. I gotta type 5 PCs level 02 mm. And once again, we have to drag the D12 and the D8 up here. And that are the tables that I think are good for second level. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to link these things all up and then we'll try them. And I'm back. All right, just to refresh your memory, if you need, the way you link these things up is you, in this case, for the example of a null, you would type in null, then you drag and drop the link right on top of null. All right. And then you should usually click to make sure you really dropped it in the right place. So you can see that my nulls are all working fine. Okay, I'm going to spend a couple times explaining my choices, which will allow you to make changes if you want to in your own tables. All right, so the mud methods are basically there. These tails are about 1.6% chance. These D8 plus D12 tables, this style of monster table comes from AD&D 2nd edition, where they first used them in those notebooks of monsters. And it's a pretty good system because you get a nice tail, but the ones in the middle, basically from the troglodytes to the thugs, these all are about 8%, a little bit more. So there's a 40% chance of these appearing, which means that your most common monsters that you want to have appearing should be in these 5 slots. So you can see what I did here is I did 4 humanoids and the wolf spider. Usually I like to have my most common monsters humanoids that will work in a dungeon in any random environment. And then I usually try to take a classic um, non-intelligent monster. In the first level tables, I used giant rats, which are a classic first level monster. In these cases, I use wolf spiders. I use wolf spiders because they're the spider that doesn't paralyze you for an hour. Okay. Um, they're which is pretty devastating to low-level parties who don't have a way to get rid of it. All right, so starting from the top, we had the mud methods as our very low encounter one, and the dretches. So these are the ones that'll all appear once, you know, what, once in 100, twice in 100. So these are rare. The next thing I walked up into the rares is I started using halves. The mud methods from the 1d3 plus 2 and the 1d3 plus 3 are CR 1/4. And they do have a death burst. So these are what we would consider relatively difficult 1/4, which is why we didn't use things like this in the first level encounter tables. The hobgoblin isn't a half. Most halves do a lot of damage some way. In this case, the hobgoblin has a martial advantage, which gives it essentially similar to sneak attack damage, an extra 2d6 once per round. This is why there's only one of them. And then I fill it out with goblins. Because if you put a couple of these in there, they might well overwhelm your second level party. While your second level party is significantly tougher than the first, they still can be bursted down with usually by too many 1/2s, which is why these are limited to towards the end of the tail, and I didn't put very many of them towards the tail of the bell probability. All right, there's our flying swords. Flying swords have a very high armor class. They are CR 1/4, and they have a fair amount of hit points. However, our second level party should not have, they'll have problems with them, but they should be able to handle them. Next, we put in some spellcasters. Now, these spellcasters are 1/4. And by the way, for those of you using the 2024, the acolytes are tougher. It's one of the different changes. They have a much higher armor class. I've coupled these spellcasters, and they do have bless, which is why we're being a little cautious. Yeah, so they're coupled with cultists, which are CR 1/8, right? So I'm splitting. Usually, you can do splitting by splitting. I have 2 different monster types. Normally, you want to limit yourself to 2 different types of monsters just to keep your encounter complexity low. The exception might be when you run a boss encounter, you might run 3 with the boss and then 2 types of flunkies. All right, so we got the Koatoa, which is another CR 1/4. And we've got our friends, the Sturges. Now, Sturges are 1/8, and so we were already very cautious with them in the first level encounter tables, and we're still cautious with them. As CR 1/8s, in theory, these things could rock 1 higher, up to 12 of these things, and I capped it at the party size. Notice how instead of taking them up to 1 higher than the party size, which would have been 5 times 2, 10, I capped them at 8. And that's that cap in action where you shouldn't have more monsters coming in, particularly Sturges, than twice the size of the party. The skeletons are pretty generic. They're 1/4. The trogs are also 1/4 generics. I got kobolds here. I'm using, these are only 1/8, but I've paired them with wing kobolds, which are 1/4. And so, because these are 1/8, this is like there's two, um, four of these is equal to a half. And then I'm rocking it with the 1/4 normally. The spiders are also 1/4. The goblins are 1/4. Now the thug here is in a half, and the thugs are pretty dangerous. They have pack tactics, they have melee, they have ranged, and they have a painful range. One of the things that does make them a little easier to deal with is even though they make two melee attacks, is one of the things that makes them dangerous. Their range attack, because they're using a heavy crossbow, is only one per round. So they do twice as many attacks in melee. So we're pairing these up with bandits, which are the 1/4. Bandits are the vanilla 1/8, and they pair with any type of intelligent monster as a good thing. So we got a weak monster with that half. Finally, back to the 1/4 zombies. Zombies can be a little problematical. Notice I'm running them about one higher than they should be, and that's to reflect the fact that at second level, the clerics can actually turn. So we want to give the clerics a chance to shine on these and the skeletons. Notice I'm running the skeletons one higher than they should be, just to bring out the fact that the cleric as an option can turn them, which will, cut the numbers in half for a bit usually. On my own personal tables, I go even a little bit further and I'll use minion. I actually have minions in the encounter, so I actually end up with even larger numbers to encourage them to turn and feel like they're badasses. All right, we got our slot tadpoles, which are quarters. Once again, I'm capping these things. Technically, that should be a D5 instead of a D3, but I'm capping them to 8. The Grimlocks are quarters, which are very vanilla. They will screw with your rogues because they have blind sight, but only for 30 feet, so you can't hide from them. So they're likely to be a disappointment to your rogue who's hiding around the corner, comes around and thinks he's got him, but they'll just see him. All right, the giant rats, which are weak, which are 1/4 pack tactics guys, are coupled with swarms of rats. This is thematically. I didn't want to include too many swarms of rats because rat swarms have this damage resistance, makes them tougher than they appear. The only reason we can get away using swarms with this type of thing is as they take damage, they do less. So these monsters get weaker as the party inflicts damage on them. And so I tied them with giant rats, basically to lower the danger of this encounter. Next we got orcs, which is another half, and this is basically the mirror of the hobgoblin. And so we got orcs, and I tied it with wolves. Orcs do a lot of damage. They do a big D12, and with some pretty good plus to hit damage. They also have javelins, and they can get into melee quickly. And I tied them with wolves as a 1/4 monster. This help counteract the fact that the wolves can't get more than one. Now the wolves do have pack tactics, and they will knock people down. So they're pretty good with the orcs, but they're basically meant, instead of doing multiple orcs, we did some wolves with them. Orcs, it's controversial. Orcs are no longer in the 2024 monster manual. You can substitute it with a tough, which is basically a thug. Or if you want, you could also, there's nothing stopping you from using the 2014 orcs. either from the SRD or the older Monster manual. I'm going to jump over here in a second to my 5s because I did some things differently. Most of these are mirrored, but not this. So the null I tied with Tribal Warriors. Tribal Warriors do have pack tactics, but they only use spears, so they're relatively short range. Now, gnolls and any other intelligent creature is problematical because gnolls like to eat them. So these are probably slave warriors, that the gnolls are using, with the encouragement that if they don't do well, they'll be eaten. Dretches we've already talked about. So I pretty much just mirrored them over with one more for the 5PC groups, but I did make some changes where we had orcs and gnolls. I want to point this out because what happens with a standard 5-man encounter is that if we look at this, we got 1/4 times 5, so we have 5/4. Well, 5/4 is right in between 2 1/2 and 3 1/2. So what I did here is that's why I have a D2 plus 1. So this works with 1/2. So I'm rocking just above and just below that 5/4. I'm doing that because that still gives me 2 to 3, which is a little low, but these should be good tough encounters for 5PC parties. That's pretty much my logic behind what I was trying to do with these tables. These tables, I'm going to go ahead and play test them in my Let's Play Solo to see how they go. I may do a few adjustments, but I'm pretty pleased with them. And that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. So I'll see you in the next one.